to Jamaica, Alicia Herbert OBE. It's wonderful for you all to be here. We're really appreciative of that. And we're looking forward to a wonderful evening. Let me firstly inform you that the event tonight will be streamed and there will be a photographer. So if you don't want to be photographed or on the stream, please indicate to us and action will be taken to obfuscate your view.
Just check your mic's on.
Can you check this mic? Yes. You've got one. Okay, first technical hitch for the night. And the last one. So, yesterday the Commissioner was in London, and today we have the honour and privilege of Alicia Herbert being with us today. And so we are going to start with a word of prayer. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Reverend Mark Stewart. I'm the lead minister here at the Pilgrim Church. But we're going to start with a word of prayer, and then I will hand you straight over to the next part of the meeting. Let's pray. Father, we are so grateful that we can come together as a community to speak and to share, to listen and to learn. There are so many amazing things that the Jamaican community has and has offered the world. And today, Lord, we are here to move forward the agenda of the diaspora, the Jamaican diaspora, and to invite you to help us. Bless your children as we share, as we talk, as we introduce the questions which are on our hearts today. And so let us be free, let us be happy, let us as family share what needs to be shared, what needs to be said and done. Let your blessings be upon your servants, upon your children, as we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Without any further ado, I'd like to hand over to the first Windrush Commissioner for the UK, the one and only Reverend Clive Foster MBE, who will be facilitating this evening's meeting. Let's give him a welcome.
Thank you very much, Reverend Mark, and good evening to everyone. And good evening to those of you who are here in the church, and those of you who are watching online. We're streaming this live. It's great to have you with us. And I'm really delighted to be hosting Alicia Herbert OBE today. I think it's going to be a really wonderful occasion to really get into some issues that, you know, from across the community that we want to be getting into. So I want to say hello, Wagwan, everything Chris, and that's about as far as my patois goes, being a Brittany Pitney. Okay, but I'm really delighted to say that we have Alicia here with us. Again, it's my profound honour as the Windrush Commissioner to welcome our distinguished guest, a valued partner in strengthening the bonds between the United Kingdom and Jamaica. And Her Excellency Alicia Herbert OBE is the UK High Commissioner to Jamaica. And I had the great pleasure of meeting Alicia last Christmas. I had the opportunity to spend some time with family in Jamaica, and I really enjoyed just spending some time with you there as well. And I, during that time, shared the kind of a heartfelt and insightful conversation about our ties, as it were, between the UK and Jamaica. And that's also a legacy for the Windrush generation. If ever you get a chance to get out to Kingston, there's a great Windrush Gardens, which I'm sure Alicia will tell you about as well. And so, you know, do look out for that. And we shared that shared history because we know that the Jamaican diaspora over the years been dealing with a lot of number of things concerning justice, dignity, the progress of our communities and our families and our standing within the community and indeed within the world. And I do believe I witness in Alicia a leader who embodies wisdom, compassion, and a deep respect for the Jamaican community, both at home and across the diaspora. And the High Commissioner brings a deep breadth of experience and global vision, and a genuine passion to ensure that the Caribbean people are heard. She's also chair of the Caribbean Network, which I'm sure she'll be able to explain more about as well, and the connections there as well. I think her work as the High Commissioner to Jamaica and also UK Envoy to the Caribbean, it continues to shape the relationship, not just built on policy, but built on partnership, rooted in history, in culture, and in mutual respect. So tonight's conversation is an opportunity for us to deepen that connection. And as Reverend Mark says, I really want you to feel free to share and to talk. And I feel deeply privileged that we have an opportunity like tonight to be able to share and talk with Alicia. Tonight is about deepening those connections. It's a time to listen, it's a time to learn, it's a time to build, and to ensure that future generations inherit a story marked not by injustice, but restored dignity and renewed hope. So again, we thank you, Alicia, for being here in Nottingham. Nottingham is a city rich with Caribbean heritage and Windrush history. And we look forward to your insights and leadership and your continued support for communities who call both Jamaica and the UK their home. So together we welcome you, and I'm looking forward to hearing now what you would like to share with us. So the agenda for this evening, Alicia will be coming forward and she'll be having a few moments just to talk about her role, the purpose of being here, and then we're going to hear from one or two people in the community about what they're doing regarding the Jamaica diaspora, and then we'll open it up to questions. Does that sound like a plan? So please, can we have a very warm welcome for the UK High Commissioner to Jamaica, Alicia Herbert OBE.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Clive. And thank you for coming out on a windy Wednesday evening to this talk this evening. And as well, welcome and thank you to those who are online. And thanks as well, of course, to Reverend Foster and to the Windrush and to his office for supporting this event, and indeed for helping us to organise and to be here this evening. And of course to the Pilgrim Church, Reverend Mark Stewart, and I think as well I'm in the presence, really honoured to be in the presence of the founders of this church, Reverend Canon Christian Weaver, CBE, and Reverend Rose Burrell, who I think there you are. And actually, it's really, I think it's extremely special to be doing this in a church and here in the Pilgrim Church, because the church is so central to community and to society, not only in Jamaica, but here in the UK, in the diaspora community, and indeed to the wider Caribbean community. So it's only fitting, I think, that we're doing this here this evening, in this ground and, at a church as well, given the centrality of it, to who we are and to community and how we express ourselves. As Clive said, I am the UK High Commissioner, the British High Commissioner to Jamaica. In a sense, what I do, I represent British interests in Jamaica. My job is to strengthen the relationship between the UK and Jamaica. But my journey to become High Commissioner is probably very similar to so many of you in this room. I was born in Trinidad quite a few decades ago. Came to this country as a student, thought I will do 3-4 years and then go home. Guess what? 30 years later, I'm still here. Not only am I still here, I've changed my nationality and now I'm representing the British government. But I hope that my personal history means that I'm able not only to represent the UK and our values and what we want to project into the world and to project into Jamaica, but also have an understanding of the region and how those two fit and how they complement each other. So I take it that, hopefully, later on we will talk about that in terms of our different journeys and what the experience is here as a member of a diaspora community. But why am I here, and what do we do? What does this British High Commissioner do in Jamaica? So Clive gave you a sense of what my home looks like, and maybe next time you come home for Christmas, you probably want to pop by as well. But what's the role and what is this about and what do we do? As I said, it's about trying to build and to strengthen those relationships between the UK and Jamaica. A relationship and a history which we know is long and deep, and in some instances a tricky history, a difficult history. And part of what I would like to do over the course of the next few years is not to hide and duck away and around that history, but in fact for us to confront it and to be quite clear that it's our shared history, and then how do we move forward as a result. At the High Commission in Jamaica, we have focused on 3 big areas. Working in partnership with the Jamaican government and a whole range of stakeholders in Jamaica. And those are 3 big areas. One of them is around addressing the climate crisis. And if we needed any reminder of the challenge that we have on climate, we only need to think back to October 28th, 2025, when Melissa struck Western Jamaica. The devastation was unreal. I'm sure some of you are connected. You've got families there in the western part of Jamaica. You were probably sending barrels back at some point. You were sending money through Western Union, and you were trying to connect in some way to, in a sense, to relieve some of the pain that was caused as a result of that hurricane. And I went in a week, 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, a month later, 3 months later into some of those parishes. And the devastation, as I said, was quite, and it is still quite significant. Significant progress has been made in terms of the recovery, but still we know that there are some people, some communities still without electricity, still without connections to the network. And we're now feeling the impact as well across the island, in the sense that if you've got 185 mile per hour wind coming through the food basket of the island in St. Elizabeth, well, tell you what, I've been spending the last week in the UK eating as many bananas as I can because it's a bit of a rare commodity right now in Kingston. And if you do find it, it's extremely expensive. Yeah? So what it's done in terms of the impact that we're beginning to feel now coming through in terms of the agriculture and what's available, we're still living very much with the impacts of that. So climate is one of the first areas that we're working on. How do we address the climate crisis? And how do we be better prepared for hurricanes, for weather systems that may continue to come through the Caribbean and indeed to Jamaica? Another area that we're working on quite closely is around prosperity. How do we get shared prosperity between both for the benefit of the UK and for the benefit of Jamaica? Who is investing? How do we harness that potential from within the diaspora community and wider in the UK into investment into Jamaica and vice versa? How do we mutually benefit from those trading links and from those investments? So that's the second area for us, which is around prosperity. And the third, we'll continue with our cooperation around security. Unfortunately, across the Caribbean region, across the Caribbean basin, we've got a real challenge around security. serious organized crime, gangs. They're multinational businesses that move and reshape and reconfigure themselves depending on what the market requires. And unfortunately, it's gripping so many parts of the region, including Jamaica, and we work very closely with the Jamaican government and a whole range of different stakeholders in order to tackle those issues around insecurity. And within that, as well, issues around violence against women and girls, which unfortunately is growing across the region. So within that wider security challenge that we've got a real challenge as well around violence against women and girls, or sometimes we say gender-based violence. So we can talk a bit more of that as well. But as I said earlier on, why the key reason, the purpose, the rationale for me being here this evening is that I think if I am to be an effective representative, your representative in Kingston, if I'm to be an effective representative of the British government in Kingston, I must understand Jamaicans. I must try to get under the surface of how people move and think and approach their lives. And I must also understand how Brits of Jamaican heritage also see that nation and what they would want us to do, and how they would want us to, at the High Commission, to strengthen that relationship. So I'm here really to listen, to learn, and hopefully what we can do through the conversation this evening is think about ways in which we can harness your interest. There are many of you here this evening, so I'm assuming that demonstrates interest. Your interests, your talents, the potential that's here across the Midlands, so that the relationship between the UK and Jamaica remains and continues to grow, and in fact is a stronger one. So interested in your experiences, interested in what you think we should be doing, I should be doing as your High Commissioner, and as well the role that you play as the diaspora community. I don't intend to talk for very long. I will end there, but because what I would like to do now is really open this up and for you to ask questions, for you to comment, and hopefully we'd have a fruitful discussion for the rest of the evening. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Alicia. I think you've given very much food for thought there on those three areas, initially anyway, addressing the climate issue, prosperity and security. What I'd like to do at this moment, before we get into the dialogue, I just want to recognise and acknowledge a few people in the room so that we get a sense of who's in the room and the contributions that can come as well. I know we have a lot of distinguished people here. I know we have a few councillors. I do want to acknowledge, and perhaps Mark, if we can get the roving mic going, and I may say a few names, so don't be surprised if I call you out and you say hello and who you are, and any initial thoughts that you may wish to say. We have Councillor Audra Winter here. Yeah, I see at the back there. Mark, if you just handle the microphone, if you can just say hello and say a little bit about a few things of what you do and how you've been involved in supporting the Jamaican diaspora.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome, Alyssa. Great to have you here. My name is Councillor Audra Winter. Clive's caught me off guard because I've just come back from Manchester from a fire conference, so I'm a little bit... but yeah, in terms of what I've been doing, clearly the devastated impact that struck Jamaica last year in terms of Melissa, I've been working with a number of individuals to see how we can actually work in partnership to address some of the issues in Jamaica. So it'd be good to understand, you said there's been progress made, so it's good to understand where that has been made, because I know from speaking to friends and family that they're still waiting on grants and contributions to help address some of the issues that they face. And I think there are still some areas, especially in St. Elizabeth, that still don't have electricity and water now. So it would be good to understand what's happening there. And actually, you know, the Jamaica government has had a tremendous amount of money come into the country, so it'd be good to understand what are the barriers for people actually getting access to that. And another thing that I've been involved with is actually really just raising the awareness around the Windrush compensation claims. And just to say, everybody in this room, if they haven't claimed already, probably are entitled to do so, because it's wider than just the Caribbean. It's the Commonwealth. So I think it's just to recognise that the work that Clive has been doing, the church and many other people, Councillor. Well, you're no longer a member, but obviously former councillor who's actually been involved in doing much of that. So, yeah, so that's mainly me, and I serve as a councillor for Bestwood and also chair of the Nottinghamshire Fire and Rescue Service. And we were talking about some key things today around what's happening around the world, the volatile environment that we face, and perhaps some of the things that we are going to have to do here in the UK going furthest in terms of civil defence. Thank you
very much. And welcome again, Councillor. Yep. And if you would just pass it in front of you, we have Barrington Billings from Tuntum Housing, and I know you've got a recent new role as well, so it'd be great if you can just tell us who you are and a little bit about yourself.
Sure, thank you. Barrington Billings, Director of Operations at Tuntum Housing Association, and last September, I believe, I was appointed Chair of BME National. It's a national body that represents all the black and minority ethnic-led housing associations in the UK. I've been working with both these distinguished reverends over the last year or so, and supporting the Windrush Commissioner in the work that he's trying to do and is doing. And we have a number of residents, elderly residents, who were from that generation, who themselves need that help. My interest in this evening is around construction, because the type of housing that are in Jamaica, I know, is part of the problem in terms of being able to resist something like a hurricane. I remember when it was Grenada actually had their big hurricane. I was at the time the president of the Chartered Institute of Housing, and I was asked by Richard Rennick, the former chief exec of Tuntum Housing, to make my charity supporting Grenada in terms of being able to build new houses. And we actually developed some hurricane-resistant housing, and they've delivered about 10 or so new houses in Grenada. So I know there are ways in addressing and minimizing the impact on the residents in Jamaica by the way the houses are constructed, and that's one of the things I'll be interested in, knowing what the government is doing about the building standards in Jamaica. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Barrington. And immediately behind you, I can see a gentleman who's done a lot of work in terms of, you can call it kind of a security. It's Michael Henry from Communities Inc. If you can just say hello. I know he's very...
Hi, Clive. You know me. I'm very shy.
Exactly.
Thanks. I'm really pleased to be here. And Clive mentioned my organisation, Communities Inc., and one of the areas of work is something that you mentioned earlier about the sort of gender-based violence or violence against women and girls. So I'd be really interested to hear a little bit more about that. It is a very topical subject, but it's something that we really need to get to grips with. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And we have Councillor Leslie Ayula, who is part of B Global. If you stand up, Leslie, we can get the microphone to you. Is doing a lot of work here supporting communities, and part Jamaican, part Nigerian, but more Jamaican than Nigerian.
Yes, a true Pan-Africanist, as Marcus Garvey would say. So, thank you, Commissioner Clive and Commissioner Herbert. Thank you for your contributions and what you're doing here, in the UK. Yes, I'm a local councillor, and obviously my connection with Windrush is that right at the start, I wouldn't say the start, but many years ago, probably about 5 or so years ago, I represented a number of people within my own constituency, my own ward, to support people who were going through this scandal. And obviously I met Pastor Clive, and obviously was working, but also with Councillor Matsiko as well. And obviously Councillor Matsiko is more trained and specialised in the area of law, immigration law, etc. So I used to pass, and I still do up to this day, pass all of my casework onto him. and obviously you triage that with yourself, etc., part of the wider scheme. So I think that's a critical work, and it has to continue. And obviously we're here as local representatives on the ground to support you in your work, what you're doing, Clive. So it's a really important thing. But also, one of the things which I'm also passionate about is that of entrepreneurship. Now I know many people do, and have 9-to-5 jobs, etc. But the key to any community in its survival is the strength of its economic base. And we cannot rely upon others to provide for us what we can really provide for ourselves. And so really, my drive and my desire is to see how we can utilize our links, both here in the UK, but also abroad and in Jamaica in particular, to drive ahead and capitalize on any opportunities which are going forward. Now, obviously, we're based, obviously, right here in Nottingham. We work right across the East Midlands, but just as our name, Be Global, suggests, that actually we're connected to a global community. And I think it's those global ties which are our strength in actually capitalizing on the opportunities ahead. And just like, the UK made that wise decision many years ago to leave the EU with the Brexit vote, and obviously that creates an opportunity for us to step into that gap, and then provide those trade links with back home and to people right here in the UK. So, thank you for your time and your contribution, and we love to have further conversations to take this forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Interesting comment about a wise decision on that Brexit one. Well, I'm sure we're going to hear a bit more about that. You left us there. It sounded very convincing, actually. It didn't come across as a tongue-in-cheek. Anyway, next to him we have Councillor Diane McKenzie, who has been doing a lot of work across the Midlands for Jamaicans. And please, Diane.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Commissioner and Commissioner. And the wider community. It's really nice to see the turnout that we have this evening. Thank you for that, Pastor Clive. I want to say it's nice to see you because there is representation. You look like me, you smile like me, and it's good to see you, so thank you for that. Jamaica is a very special place, and many years ago, we were at a community meeting in London, and we had a lovely British gentleman that was speaking to the community. And he was asked about this special relationship between Jamaica and the United Kingdom. And he looked at us all, and he said, there is no longer any special relationship between Jamaica and the United Kingdom. To which we were all surprised. So I am looking forward to hearing more as we delve into it, if there still is a special relationship between Jamaica and the United Kingdom, because it doesn't feel like that sometimes. When we had the hurricane, I think we were all very surprised when all the countries contributed and our beloved United Kingdom decided that we were worth how much? Say that loudly. 2.5 million. Until it was raised. So we kind of had to make a little bit of a protest and then raised it to 5. So it additionally 5 million, we had what, 7.5 million. Now, Pastor Clive indicated that I have had some work that we kind of draw the community together to help as much as we could. But obviously it was a drop in the bucket, because when we look at what will happen over the next 10 years, it is going to take us time to get Jamaica back to where it was, and probably even better, because that's what we want. So we know that the long haul, we are in it as a diaspora for the long haul. And what I would ask the community in general, please do not get wary. And I know people are going to still fundraise, people are going to still be having events, and I'm please asking us to not get wary in attending and supporting and contributing to these things. Because as Commissioner said in her introduction, we still have a long way to go because there are places that still haven't got security, electricity, running water, the roads are terrible. I was in Jamaica in December, and I went out on behalf of the committee that we formed, and we went into Hanover with some food distributions. So I know that there are still communities in Jamaica that are impacted. Now, I like the three focuses that you have. Climate change is a big thing, but we know that the Caribbean countries are not the main perpetrators of pollution. So I'm very interested in seeing the burden that the UK would want to place on Jamaica to meet that standard. The other one is security, which is a big thing for us here in the diaspora, because I think it is our biggest deterrent if we think of going home. And I can't remember the second one.
Well, addressing climate, prosperity, and security.
I want you to say the second one again, Clive.
Prosperity.
Everybody heard that? So that is the biggest thing, I think, as Councillor Leslie has indicated, because what I have found is if you do not have economic capital, your voice is very, very limited. And whether we believe or we agree as a diaspora, our voice is limited. And so we have to address that. We have to, as a community, we don't want to be the ones to go out with a begging bowl to anyone, because I think we are very much able among ourselves to look after ourselves first before we go to anybody else. And so I am hoping that this is not just another meeting that we came out because we have the High Commissioner, but that as a community, we are really, really willing to do the work to get to where we want to go.
Thank you very much, Diane. And just final two more. I'm going to invite Councillor Matsiko, and then I'm going to make a final call for someone very special to say a few words.
Hello, good evening, everybody. I'm Councillor Matsiko, still a councillor, just on a different party, but I won't go into the politics. But first and foremost, I'll say I'm a humanitarian, and like to have a lot of respect for what Pastor Clive Foster has done with the Windrush, as I helped him from the outset with status issues, and that work continues. And also to welcome the High Commissioner for the UK to Jamaica. And there are some really big struggles at the moment, especially when it comes to immigration and nationality. I've been doing a lot of work with modern slavery victims in the UK who are from Jamaica, and also working very closely to try and I'm going to be starting a campaign soon to help regularise young people who have been caught out in terms of their status, immigration-wise, and indefinite leave or citizenship. Because when they turn 18, with leave to remain, they're treated as international students, and so they cannot afford to go to higher education and therefore are at risk of getting into criminality, and some really tragic stories I've been witnessing doing that. And apologies, I'm a bit tired today. I've just been down to London at Parliament to lobby, there's a mass lobby, against the new changes of earned settlement and earned citizenship, which are very toxic, very damaging. And as Clive knows all the time, I ring him whenever I speak to him, I'm pressing him harder and harder and harder. The lessons learnt review that Wendy Williams did, and accompanied with Martin, we need to really make sure the government does not drop the ball on that. It's so important, especially for those key things, or security, prosperity. In terms of climate change, it's not really my area, but certainly I do agree with what Councillor said about making sure the burden is not overborne by Commonwealth countries such as Jamaica. And yes, and over the many years had a very, very great relationship with Jamaican community in the UK. Lots of stories, lots of really good news cases where, for example, a bereavement during COVID, where the Jamaican High Commission really did step up to help a family bury their loved one in Jamaica, as well as get to Jamaica to bury them in person and come back with indefinite leave to remain. So there's some really good stories there as well, and really good positive things. But in the UK, this immigration system, the citizenship system, is becoming really more hostile, and we really need to keep that pressure going to make sure that the government really respect the legacy of the Windrush and also the change that should come as a part of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And finally, but by no means least in this section, I'd really like to introduce someone who is very well known to those of us in Nottingham and the Midlands, a person who was twice the Sheriff of Nottingham, the first black woman to be the Sheriff of Nottingham, and also, I believe, the first black female Lord Mayor as well. So she's not messing about with being the first. Recently awarded the MBE for her outstanding work to community over the years. Also appointed, I nearly said anointed, older woman. And wait for it, the accolades keep going. Next month, she will be appointed the High Sheriff of Nottinghamshire. Please welcome Melita Bryan.
Oh my God.
To say a few words.
Oh my God. I can't believe you're talking about me, Pastor Clive. Good evening, everyone. And can I welcome Commissioner Herbert to Nottingham. It's nice to see you here tonight to witness our fabulous Nottingham people. People always seem to stop the other end of the motorway at the M1 for some reason. I don't know why they're frightened to come into Nottingham, because Nottingham people is beautiful, even though I say it myself. Thank you very much, Pastor Clive. Can I just say, firstly, the work that Pastor Clive is doing in the community is absolutely outstanding and amazing. He took this on some years ago with the Windrush scandal, and he never stopped. He carried it through. And I just would like you to give him a big round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you. As for me, just like the commissioner had said, she born in another country, but unfortunate for me, I came from Jamaica at a very young age, 11 years old, and I'm still here 60 odd years later. I love Jamaica immensely. I go to Jamaica as regular as I can. And for me, I would love to see the development of Jamaica. I would love to see things happening with our young people who goes to Jamaica. Because while the diaspora was very active in Nottingham, one of the things we tried to do is to get our young people involved, because we're not going to be here all the time, so we need to have young blood coming through. But we find it very, very difficult to get our young people to come on board. So I don't know if you've got any antidote that we can use for that. And I mean, Jamaica, young Jamaicans just see Jamaica as a place for holiday, and we want them to see Jamaica as somewhere completely different. It's been said about the relationship between the UK and Jamaica. And as it's been said, probably a lot of, I don't know, English people don't see Jamaica and us as allies. We are part of the Commonwealth. And at times we're not treated like that. They think, you know, whatever happens, if something goes wrong, it's them Jamaicans. If it's something good, we never hear anything about it. But everything that is wrong, it's the Jamaicans who's done it. And I've heard a few talking, and for myself, we don't like the relationship that is sort of developing up between Jamaica and America. We are a little bit worried about that gentleman. We are a little bit worried about that gentleman because he seems to be a law unto himself, and everybody seems to be frightened of him. And I have got family still in Jamaica, And I would not like to see my family taken over by other country. We don't want to see that. A lot of us don't. And we are a little bit worried about that. That's something to think about. As for what the diaspora is doing from this country to Jamaica, I have seen the massive support that the Jamaicans have given to the relief during the hurricane with Melissa. Here in Nottingham, people have just pulled all the stops out to try and do the best for Jamaica. And I must say, it wasn't just Jamaicans. The Nottingham just came out. Yeah. I was part of the committee that Councillor Audrey talks about, and Councillor Mackenzie. And I've been part of packing the stuff that people bring. And it was just amazing to see our Jamaican people come out to help people who they do not know. Young people comes out to help people who they do not know in Jamaica. But we want to keep that relationship going. And anything that you can do to help us to keep that relationship going, do it. I've retired from full-time working, but I've got ideas of doing things in Jamaica. And I hope, I don't know, when I finish this office, Pastor Clive, I'll get a chance to go to Jamaica to probably do some of those things. I'm from St. Thomas, and I love St. Thomas dearly. I started a little project to raise money for the hospital. We raised a little bit of money. I've sent things out to Jamaica. So we want to continue that. And there's many, many people in this room who are doing a great deal for Jamaica. And they don't shout about it. They just do it and get on with it. So, you know, for me, I just want to see us work together. And whatever you can do to help us, please help us to do the best we can for Jamaica. Thank you.
Thank you. So, a lot there, Alicia. So I'm going to give an opportunity for you to make some initial responses to some of those things. And then we are now going into that format of Q&A, where you can ask your question and engage and dialogue. So Alicia, if you want to head off some of those initial comments, and then we're going to continue to open up to more questions and talk.
Good, huge. Thanks a lot for that, Clive. You know, fantastic questions, and thanks for opening those up. So I'll just try to cover a few of the topics, or at least all of them, you know, as much as I can, and I'll speak very openly and very honestly to you about where I can answer and where I can't. I'll just start with the gentleman that you were talking about. I can't make comment about that. I think I know who we're talking about. I don't know. I'm not sure, but I think I know who we're talking about. But given that I'm the British High Commissioner, I am British. I'm not sure I'm talking about that other gentleman. So we'll probably leave that one. There for now. So just a few things. One of them, I think, one of the first questions was about the progress being made. So far, look, the people are now saying that was probably a Category 6 hurricane. Right, if there's such a thing. And I say all the time, you know, if you think about being somewhere, I don't know, sitting in your home, and there's wind of 180, 190 miles per hour for 7 hours. Could you imagine what that experience would have been like? Somewhere in between, maybe at hour 4 or 5, there had probably been a bit of a reprieve when the eye was coming over. And then she came back, and she came from another direction and continued. It was, you know, the enormity of it is just beyond thinking. In a sense, you know, there I was sitting in Kingston with my house boarded up, and the wind was blowing outside, and I was getting worried about it, but that was absolutely nothing compared to what people in the west of the island had experienced. So let's not forget the kind of trauma that we're living with as well. In addition to the physical damage, the psychological trauma and the impact that Hurricane Melissa has had on Jamaica. I say that because, and I'm not here to speak on behalf of the Jamaican government, but what I'm here to say as well is that it was a challenge for any government to respond to such an event, if we want to call it an event. I'm not sure what level of preparation one has in order to respond to that. So what we see happening now, and I think the question was about, well, what's in place? But before I come to that, we still know that, as I said, people are still not connected. Challenges around network, challenges around electricity. I saw an article in the newspaper last week that said 1,000 children are missing from the school system. Where are they? Have they dropped out? Maybe they've moved to another parish. We know a lot of people have moved to Kingston and they probably have not re-registered, etc. So the children missing in the education system. We know that the healthcare system is still under a significant amount of stress, for example. But, reconnection has continued in terms of many parts of Western Jamaica in terms of continuing connection of power lines, thinking about the future, and should it be underground, but that's extremely expensive. I don't know, some of you would have visited in the last few months and you would have seen electricity poles, concrete poles on the side of the street. They were blown over. Right? If you were there 2 weeks after, there were huge areas which were just brown because the wind basically burnt the bark of the trees and every leaf was gone. Right? It was apocalyptic what you were looking at. I had never seen anything like that. My minister one of the British ministers visited in December, and he said if someone had told him a bomb had dropped in a particular place, he would have believed them. That was the extent of the devastation. So I think that there has been, progress in terms of trying to get people back on some kind of even keel, trying to get communities back up and running, trying to get the local economies going, trying to build back. And I think, as someone said, but still, given the length of time it probably takes to build back better and build back in a way that would withstand any kind of future event, that's going to take time. And therefore, I think what we are seeing is people building back with the same zinc roof that they had before, which we know is not necessarily going to stand up to hurricanes in the future. But what do you do in the interim? Do you stay with your tarpaulin, or do you just at least try to get something that's a bit more sturdy, etc.? So really difficult decisions, I think, to be made. And in terms of the whole kind of construction piece, I think someone asked about that as well. We've done some work as the British government, your tax pound. We've invested over the years in what we call smart clinics. So these are clinics where we've retrofitted in order to withstand very significant hurricanes, very significant wind. They stood up to Beryl and they stood up to Melissa. So for example, the one in Santa Cruz, the only issue was actually getting to it the next day because of all the debris that was in the path to get to the clinic. But it stood up. So what's happening now is that the Ministry of Health has taken on those standards, and every clinic across the country over the course of the next few years, as they build, as they rebuild, as they retrofit, will take those on. So that's something that's happening within the health sector. Within the education sector as well, in my recent meeting with the Minister of Education, she has building standards to respond to this, but she's also going to look at what's happening within the health sector, because in a sense it's a proof of concept. If it stood up to Beryl and it stood up to Melissa, then there's something in that. So as I said, I'm not speaking here on behalf of the Jamaican government. It's a very significant challenge. Some progress has been made, but we know there's still a lot to do. There's a lot of thinking about the location of towns. Black River, you've got all these wonderful towns right on the coast. Falmouth, yeah? So the water comes, the storm surge comes in and guts it. Yeah, every single shop along the high street in Black River was gutted by the storm surge. It literally came in, took everything out, and took it back out to sea. So there are big questions being asked. Do you rebuild Black River where it was before, or do you put it somewhere else? Knowing where we are with the climate crisis, and we'll probably increase the frequency and the intensity of hurricanes in the future. So there are major, big strategic questions as well for the Jamaican government as to not how you rebuild in individual houses or schools or clinics, but also in terms of towns. Do they stay where they are, or do they move anywhere else? And we know that towns and cities are not just places where people live. That's your heart and soul. That's part of your identity. So moving it is quite a big decision. So just wanted to put that out there, as it were. On gender-based violence and violence against women and girls, that's an area for us which is hugely important. It's a personal priority of the Foreign Secretary, and coming to it very, very much in a spirit of partnership. In the UK, every 3 days, a woman is killed at the hands of her previous or current partner. Yeah? Every 3 days, a woman in this country is killed at the hands of her previous or current partner. We got a problem. So this is not about lecturing to Jamaica about how to deal with gender-based violence. This is about saying to Jamaica, we've got a challenge too, and how can we work together in order to grapple with that particular issue. The form that the gender-based violence takes in Jamaica is sometimes different to what we have here in the UK. We know gangs and serious organized crime is very much part of it. But there's a lot of evidence, ways of doing things that we can share in order to tackle that issue here in the UK, as well as in Jamaica. And very recently, Jamaica became one of 8 countries across the world where the British government has decided to focus down on this particular issue. So what we will see moving forward is much deeper partnership, much deeper relationship in the way in which we tackle those issues. Because my goodness, it must be tackled. Because we know that, and we all know this, that, you know, if a woman is to turn up to work, or indeed a man or a young man to turn up to work or to school, battered and bruised or in some way impacted, then they cannot give their best. If they cannot give their best as individuals, you're not getting the best out of them as a community, you're not getting the best out of them as a society, you're not getting the best out of them as an economy. So even if we don't want to do it for the individual, and we're interested in the economy growing, we're interested in having a cohesive society, then it must be tackled. Because we lose so much when that continues. So that's a big challenge for us, not only here in the UK, but also in Jamaica, and one area that we want to move and to work on very closely. Someone mentioned Windrush, and again, I probably should have said that in my introductory remarks. Huge thanks for those of you in the room who are just, very much part of that generation and the contribution that you've made. My uncle came to this country in the late 50s, early 1960s, out of Barbados. So I remember when I came here as a young student in the 1980s and met him. Again, it was I came in a different, sense, a kind of different generation, right, in the 1980s as opposed to the 1950s and 60s, and just began to understand the journey of Afro-Caribbean people in this society through his eyes, in a sense, and recognize as well the contribution that he made. And as part of that, you spoke about entrepreneurship. We're actively thinking about how do we harness all of the ideas and so around entrepreneurship across the diaspora community. So look, not much to say right now, but there's some ideas bubbling up about entrepreneurship, support, mentorship, small companies, medium-sized companies, etc. So you will hear more from us on that. And I'll just kind of rattle through maybe some of the other ones. I think somebody you spoke about, you said you were really pleased to see me and that representation matters. I have this wonderful thing in Jamaica. Whenever I am out and about and somebody meets me, they shake my hand and they say, "I'm really, really pleased to meet you. I'm really pleased it's you," which is a wonderful way of sort of talking about representation. And then the next line is, "So are you Jamaican heritage?" Really excitedly. And then I say, "No, I'm from Trinidad. I was born in Trinidad." They said, "Okay." Slightly disappointed. And then they said, "What's all right? We'll Caribbean is okay. We'll take you for now." Yeah? But anyway, it's fantastic for me personally and professionally. It's fantastic to be back in the region. As I said, I thought it was going to be 3-4 years. 30 years later, this is my first time working professionally back in the region. So huge thanks for your comment about, about representation. And then you talked about Jamaica and the special relationship, and is it still a special relationship between Jamaica and the UK? I'm not sure who said it wasn't, but everything says to me that it's still that it still is. And then you were talking about the humanitarian response. And I want to spend a little bit of time on the humanitarian response, because I think it's a lesson, it's a very, very, very hard lesson that we learned from the humanitarian response. And I'll tell you why. We wanted, because of the importance that we attached to the relationship with Jamaica, we wanted to be very, very early on, wanted to be one of the first off the block to make an announcement about how we were going to respond to what was a very devastating hurricane. So within days, we announced £2.5 million. It was always the case that we were going to be putting more funding into it. But we wanted to get off the stocks, and maybe we were kind of driven by our comms or driven by wanting to kind of demonstrate that we wanted to support and we wanted to lean in. So we announced the £2.5 million. And I'll tell you what else we've done. So just bear with me for a little while. So we announced the £2.5 million. We were one of the first countries to get relief items into Jamaica. I know that because I was on the tarmac with the Minister of Foreign Affairs collecting the crates and the pallets of tarpaulin and lanterns and everything else that become dignity kits for women. We still have our period during crisis. I hope I'm not offending anybody by saying that, but it continues. It doesn't stop because you've had a hurricane. So dignity kits, tarpaulin, lanterns, a whole range of essential items. We were one of the first countries to actually bring that into Jamaica because they were pre-positioned. We had stuff already in Barbados, we had some here in the UK, and they were brought in. We had staff pre-positioned, right? Because we knew the hurricane was coming. She was very slow when she moved across the Caribbean. So we flew people out to Barbados, knowing that as soon as she hits, we would be able to get them from Barbados. It would be much closer to come to Jamaica. So we announced the 2.5 million, and then we announced additional funding. Eventually, in that particular package, about £8.5 million. But we did a lot more than that, and I just want to kind of give you a sense of what that was about. So yes, we had the relief items. We had experts on the ground as well, just to give you a sense of some of the experts that we had. We had people from the National Health Service here, right, coming out to Jamaica, nurses, midwives, doctors, embedding themselves within the Jamaican health system. And they recognized it, because guess what? The Brits set it up 300 years ago, right? So they were very easily able to immerse themselves within the national health system in Jamaica and start working, within that system. So we had health professionals. We brought in linesmen to help fix the poles and electricity from across the Caribbean region. So that's some of the expertise that we had on the ground, and lots more, but I'm just giving you some examples. And then, as well, we had a naval vessel that was in the region, HMS Trent. She was in the Turks and Caicos Islands. She came to Falmouth. And in Falmouth, I was there, I saw them. You had young men, young Navy officers, on roofs of Falmouth Hospital, basically rebuilding it. And that then became the hospital in that part of the country, in Trelawney, because others were devastated, the clinics were devastated. So that became the hub, and it was hugely important. The main school in Falmouth as well, they rebuilt. They were literally there mucking it out, because you had mud 3-4 feet high from the storm surge. And I remember when I met them, I said to them, this is not about cleaning up, you're bringing people hope. If you walk into a hospital, or you walk into a school, and there's 4 feet of mud, and the books are everywhere, you don't know where to start. And in a sense, when they cleared it out, they gave the school principals, they gave the medical staff an opportunity then to take it on and say, you know what, we can build from here. We can now cook a meal in the kitchen for the patients. So, it wasn't only about them actually doing the physical work, but I think it was psychologically the hope that they were bringing to staff, not only at the school, but also at the hospital. We had young doctors from the naval ship literally going through barrels of medical equipment that were floating in seawater to determine what could still be used and what could not be used. So lots there in terms of having very visible through HMS Trent. And then, of course, we supported organizations like UNICEF, UNFPA, World Food Programme, food parcels to people. UNICEF, really important work in terms of creating safe spaces particularly for children and young people, particularly for adolescent girls. In a crisis, and it happens all over the world, when children are out of school, they're very vulnerable, particularly for young women. So and some churches were still standing, so we used whatever spaces we could in order to get children some sense of normality during the course of the day. Yeah? And to get them together, and hopefully they're in a safer place. So all of that, yes. But I just want to say two more things that are really important for us to register as well. One of them is around the work of preparedness. So long before Melissa hit, as I said, those smart clinics we had invested quite significantly in, and they stood up, and therefore were able to deliver services after Melissa. So that's an investment of the British government. That wasn't part of 2.5 or 8.5 or whatever. That was an investment that had been happening well over the years. Other investments that we have done that actually came into being after Melissa, I think someone mentioned the money that the government got. So within a week or so of Melissa hitting, the Jamaican government got about $150 million in a payout from an insurance policy. Then they got more, and it eventually was about 600 million. Well, the British government, your tax pound, or the tax pound that your children, your grandchildren work for and pay, actually bought technical expertise many years ago that supported the Jamaican government to set up those insurance policies. So, no, it's not a particular sum of money, but the support that was given so that the insurance policies were in place to pay out. And this is what they call parametric insurance. I wouldn't bore you with the technical detail, but as soon as something happens, it triggers, you get the payout of 600 million. In this case, it was $600 million. But it was much more than that, because, as you know, the Jamaican government also will be in receipt of something like $6.5 billion. By the way, when I'm talking about dollars, I'm talking US dollars, not Jamaican dollars. So $6.5 billion is what they've got now for reconstruction. So what does it have to do with the British? Well, we've been lobbying quite hard in organizations like the IMF and the World Bank, so that countries like Jamaica, when crisis hits, that you don't keep on them to make their loan payments as they were in the past. That you've got to completely renegotiate, you probably have to look for some kind of reprieve for those loans so that they can actually rebuild and they can do that reconstruction. So I guess what I'm trying to say to you here, and hopefully not sounding defensive, is that yes, you've got a High Commissioner standing there with a high-vis jacket and getting relief items off a plane, which is hugely important for people's immediate needs. But the big money and the big support that has to come on the back of that, we were very much involved over the years in terms of setting up of insurance policies, and as well in terms of significant lobbying in order to ensure that sums of money, the billions of dollars which are now going to come on stream in Jamaica, will actually, come on stream. And as well, we are now working very, very closely with them about how that money is going to be spent. Because there's lots swirling around as, but are we going to see the money, etc. That's something that the Jamaican government is going to have to convince its people of how that money is being spent. But we as the British government are working with them in the sort of experience we have had in other parts of the world to say, this is a model you can set up. This is the way you probably want to channel this. But of course, this is up to the Jamaican government as to what do they prioritize? What type of infrastructure do they prioritize first? What comes second? What comes third, etc. But we're very much involved in that piece of work. So I hope that gives you a sense of what we did in the lead up to the hurricane, and indeed later on. And I'll just finish up now, Clive, because I know I'm spending a lot of time. But I just thought I needed to explain that on the hurricane, and we have taken the lesson quite hard. We communicate. It's a massive lesson for us in terms of communication, and we've taken that away, and we're going to think about it very, very, very carefully. And then, people talked about the burden of the climate crisis. Absolutely, we know, where the climate crisis has come from over time. And their whole approach to it now is not about placing the burden on countries like Jamaica, but in fact, we've got a lot of work happening with small island developing states, and very much about how do they access finance in order to respond to the climate crisis. So it's very much in that spirit, recognizing, of course, we must all recognize, how our own consumption habits in countries like the UK have actually contributed to the climate crisis. On security, we know we've had something like a 40% plus reduction in the crime rate in Jamaica. Lots of debate about how it came about, and et cetera. My role is not to comment on that as such, but in a way to continue our support to ensure that continues to move in a downward direction. Yeah, 40 plus percent. I think it's 46% is quite high, but it's coming from a very high base. Yeah. So you've got to keep chipping away at it. So how do we continue to work with the police? How do we continue to work with agencies on serious organized crime, for example? And then the final thing, I think someone asked about the youth and young people. And it's something that came up. I did a session in Croydon on Monday night, and that's something that came up there as well. And look, I have children who are born of immigrant parents. And my husband is from Ghana. He's Ghanaian. As I said, I was born and grew up in Trinidad, and we've got kids who are, in a sense, first generation. And I think they've approached it differently, and the connection that they have to Trinidad or to Ghana will probably vary, yeah? A few days ago, my son said to me, well, Mum, as Ghanaians, I said, oh, I didn't know you were Ghanaian, right? But I think you're half Nigerian. When you see my son eating his fufu, it's just his fufu and light soup. It's a delight to watch, yeah? Our daughter is probably in a different space. Not necessarily rejecting any of that, but I think she's in a different space on some of this. So I agree with you that, our children don't necessarily have the same passion about the places where we were born and we are kind of connected to, but there's probably something in there that we can work with. And we haven't thought that through yet about what we can do and what we can facilitate, but I'm definitely in the market for ideas. And it's something that was raised as well in Croydon a few days ago. So there's clearly, in the diaspora communities across the country, people thinking about how do we, yes, our young people, they are British, that's what they identify as, but is there more that they can be doing? Is there something that they can lean into and continue the work that so many of you have been doing? But those are my sort of initial sort of responses.
Great, thank you, Alicia. Let's give her a hand. Just stay here. We're gonna
get some water.
Yeah, get yourself some water. So we're gonna have this session now, about 30 minutes, rapid fire questions. I want to say to those of you online, you can also submit a question online, and we'll be able to read that out. So if you've got a question there you're thinking about, do drop us a line on the chat and we'll get that out to you. Now, as you can see, Alicia is no stranger. She's used to taking lots of questions. So please, if you're going to ask a question, what I will encourage you, get to your question quickly. Don't please tell a long story. You don't need to. Just get to your question, and Alicia will be able to help it, because I don't want no one who come here tonight leaving thinking, I didn't have a chance to answer my question because brother so-and-so was talking so long when he was giving his question. Okay, so put your hands up. I'll spot, and I'll bring you in. Gentleman at the back there, and then I've got Denise, and then I've got Monica.
Yeah. Good.
Good evening and welcome to the Midlands, because I'm from Wolverhampton.
All right.
I've crossed the divide and I've brought myself along. But obviously agree with all the questions that were asked and the answers that were given. But I'm wondering on two main things. You've mentioned obviously climate change. I was in Jamaica in July of last year and I wondered why we didn't have more solar farms. There's more opportunities. I see a lot of space there, and we're behind on many of the other European countries, notwithstanding the UK, but on having solar farms. So that certainly I'd like to see. And around the entrepreneurship, a good friend of mine brought a group out to the University of West Indies last year, also in July. I think 20 young people with the view of making that connection. And I think there's more that we can do, particularly linking to the university, to even some of the TV channels and the like, because younger people are far more into social media. And there's far more engagement, I think, with a bit more consideration we can have around that. And I think there's one more thing, I will be quick, Clive. One more thing, in that it's disappeared. You've got a diaspora here, and we're 15–20% of the UK population. It's disappeared from the minds of everybody else. We still need more funds. Now, I'm arranging in Wolverhampton to have a fundraising collection at one of the football grounds, the Wolves, who have agreed with me on that. But I'm hoping that you'll put it in the press. I'm hoping that you'll put it back on social media, because the requirement for funding can't come out of the hands. If you believe that the first generation who are here tonight, most of them are pensioners. I'm fast approaching it. So at the end of the day, we need to keep it in the psyche of the wider population to get that.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll good. So just on that, huge thanks for that. On solar farms, yeah, I don't know the answer as to why not. I've been there 5 months. We can look into that, but we funded work on sort of on solar in terms of sustainable agriculture, for example. But yes, why not? You know what I mean? Sunshine for most of the year. Why don't we have more solar farms, more looking at sort of alternative energy, as it were? In fact, you know, energy costs in Jamaica are just through the roof. And that's one of the reasons why your foodstuff and so are so expensive, because it's an input, and therefore it increases the price of of a number of things. And it's probably one of the reasons why as well that so many people are not legally connected. So one of the challenges post-Melissa of people getting back onto the network is that they were never on the network in the first place, right? So it's a bit of a challenge there. But I'm not condoning illegal connections. All I'm saying is they weren't connected in the first place. So they're, but it's expensive, right? Things are, but just to say, we're working in terms of the renegotiation of the energy contract. We're very much in that space working with the Jamaican government because it's extremely high. University links, absolutely, I think it's hugely important. That's probably something we can think about in terms of young people and youth piece. But I know for a fact, for example, very recently I was in a meeting with the Minister of Health, and one of the things that he said to me, and again, this is something we could think about in the diaspora community, is there are some critical areas, for example, in the training of nurses where he doesn't have the expertise in Jamaica, right? And he named 3 of them. I think it was orthopedics, burns, and ophthalmology, I think it was, right? So he specified 3 areas where he doesn't have the capacity in country in terms of the training. And he's saying to me, well, you've got that in the UK. Can we not think about how we connect the training institutions in the UK to the training institutions in Jamaica, for example, or universities who can provide that? Or he said, don't you have people in the diaspora who are now retired, who are specialists in those areas, right? This stuff can be done online now, about how you teach, and you kind of give the instruction in those ways. So how do we kind of get those partnerships and think innovatively about how we do that? And funding for the diaspora community, we can take that. I'm not sure how it was funded in the past. I'll be cheeky and say you've got a lot of people in the diaspora community as well, some pretty high-profile ones who are pretty wealthy. So maybe we're talking about, we can probably bring the youth and funding of the diaspora communities and associations into one space. I think, whenever I Google or I go into ChatGPT and say, who are the Brits of Jamaican heritage? My goodness, the list is as long as whatever, and there's some pretty serious names on there.
Some big celebrities from Jamaica. Denise, and then Monica. And then afterwards I'm going to come to Penny and Enid.
Hello, good evening. The question, sorry. The question I'd like to pose, well, one of the questions is, are there any programs in Jamaica currently where the government is prepared to support the diaspora to gain access to bits of land that could be out there? One of the questions, the reason why I'm asking is because I recognize that there is seed funding in Jamaica, and especially around innovation and agriculture, and they've got key locations. How do the diaspora connect with that? Because it is tied around the diaspora. How can we get that intelligence? How can we get more access to the opportunities that are currently on the island of Jamaica? We don't, if we, you know, I went and did some research, and that's how I know. Because this, I'm very interested. I went to Jamaica recently, and agriculture, so much land, and many people weren't planting anymore because they said people are stealing it, so what's the point? And you're buying in all this food, and they're so unwell because of the box food they're buying and all the, you know, and it's really heartbreaking to watch our islanders suffer because of the lack of use of the land with the good food, going back to the old time traditions. So around that, yes. And again, I welcome the question about the university and about the collaborations, because I recently was in Jamaica. Dr. Kevin Brown invited me to UTech when Lord Carney opened the labs, and it was fantastic to see the innovation on the island. And I'm currently looking to talk to University of Nottingham to see if we can find a way to link in with, because I'm from the science background, and we're trying to find a way to link in with the technologies that are present here, to use the remote access schemes to be able to find ways to continue to develop plans and ideas and innovation in the Caribbean, and use the Russell Group universities in particular from a perspective of reparation and giving back. That would be the ideal way. So I welcome some more talks around that. Thank you.
So I could just, okay, so I'll look at that, so respond to those quickly. In terms of access to land, and so I don't have any information to hand on that. We can come back to you on that. But the Jamaican High Commission in London should be able to give you a sense of that as well. You mentioned predial larceny there. It's a massive issue. Yeah, and that's another issue that drives up costs. If you're going to have to hire security guards 24/7 to be on your farm, I'm afraid it's going to come in to the price per kilo of your bananas or your oranges or whatever it is, right? It's an additional cost that you've got to, you've got to add in. But we can probably come back to you on that. But certainly the Jamaican High Commission in London should be able to give you that. On the university piece, I'm very passionate about university or higher education, tertiary links. Because for a number of years, when I was based here in London, I ran a directorate that dealt with links. It was mainly to links between universities in the UK and the universities in sub-Saharan Africa. So we trained up, for example, through those links, most of the healthcare professionals in Somaliland. Yeah? And all of that was done actually virtual, online, how do you engage, that sort of thing. So it's something that I've asked my team to look at, about how do we become a sort of facilitator of that? Because people may have interests, and how do we facilitate those links?
Great.
Seed funding.
Seed funding, I think you mentioned?
Okay. I can come back to you on the seed
Yeah.
funding.
Monica, and then Penny, then Enid, then June Elizabeth.
Hi, Alicia, and welcome. Thank you for being you. I'm first generation Black British, and I'm very passionate about Jamaica. Even though I was born here, I've been to Jamaica numerous times. I love Jamaica. I want to invest in Jamaica, but I want to know where I need to invest. Is my investment going to be safe? And what kind of investment can Jamaica offer me?
Yeah. So again, I think, and actually, I'm looking at my I didn't introduce my colleague who's here with me. Oh gosh, apologies, Celeste. Celeste, do you want to stand up? She's going to hate me for this because she said you have me standing up in front of 100 people. But this is my colleague Celeste, who I should have introduced very early on, who works with me increasingly now on issues around the diaspora community and our diaspora engagement. We had some of this information, didn't we, from colleagues in the office in terms of investment and safety of investment, and we know it's a worry of a number of people, and some people have been burnt. Yeah, you think you're investing in one thing, and then you turn up and the house is not there, or whatever thing you thought that you were investing in, the company doesn't exist, or that sort of thing. There are we can send that through Clive. They are kind of clear websites, that sort of thing that can give you that sort of information. Again, the Jamaican High Commission in London would also be a good source of funding for that. But a lot of it will depend on, of course, doing huge amount of research, getting your background, maybe knowing others who have had successful experiences, that sort of thing. I'm telling you stuff that you already know and that you will do. Exactly. So you. Exactly. So, it's probably something that you've already doing. But, we can probably send through links. Or I know I've got information from a colleague on that. We can probably send that on through Reverend Clive.
Great. Penny, and then June Elizabeth, and then the young lady here.
Hello. Hi. Penelope Siebert, Nottingham Trent University. Actually, one of the comments and a question is around the three issues that you're talking about and you're focusing on. They're not one nation issues, are they? And I want to understand what plans or dialogues you're having with the other countries within the region, because the region is rich.
Yeah.
And again, with knowledge, UE is one of the top 50 universities in the world. So, and we have, you can tell from my accent, I'm Guyanese, so it's, again, thinking about how we work.
Country in the world.
Absolutely. So how do we make sure that we are working together within the region?
Sure.
Because some of the things around security is something that's not just about linked to Jamaica, it's a whole regional issue. You have Brazil and the other parts of that world that I think we need to start to think of how we work together. So what are the plans?
Sure. So thanks a lot for that, and I've been very very Jamaica focused in my in my responses. But I think when Clive introduced me, he also said that I have a lead role across the region. So I'm the lead head of mission across the region. I'm not the High Commissioner in those countries, but I've got a lead role in terms of looking at things regionally. And absolutely, the approach is regional. Yeah. Let's take serious organised crime. Let's take security. The gangsters are not saying, well, now today I'm in, I don't know, Montserrat, which is, an overseas territory, as it were, with a different constitutional arrangement to Jamaica, right? Which is a different constitutional arrangement to Barbados or whatever. They're just going where they have a network, yeah? And this is how they run their business. So the approach, for example, on issues like serious organised crime, absolutely, it's a regional approach. Between overseas territories, quote unquote, kind of independent Caribbean, looking, of course, into Latin America, because we know in the region we have this whole flow of drugs, for example, that comes through from South America, through Trinidad, into the Eastern Caribbean, increasing problem and increasing challenge in Eastern Caribbean, up all the way up to Jamaica, Haiti, right? The whole guns for ganja trade with Haiti. There's a price list, guys, right? If you want 30 kilos of ganja, it's going to cost you, you need to trade it for X amount of guns, of whatever. There's a chart, right? So, Haiti and the situation in Haiti, as well as destabilizing for Haiti itself, as well as the region. So on that, on climate, absolutely it's got to be a regional approach as well, and on the prosperity agenda, because we know that investors, at the end of the day, islands with 70,000, 80,000 people, it doesn't represent big markets for them, right? Even Jamaica with 2.7 million people still is not big enough, yeah, for the effort that you may have to put in. So you've got to look at it regionally and about what your footprint will be across the region, for it to be beneficial. So thank you very much for asking that question. It is very, very much a regional approach.
Yeah, and on that, what's Jamaica's biggest export? What's Jamaica's kind of a...
We had a quiz question on that recently. What was it? Beverages. To the UK. To the UK. I guess it's all that Appleton rum that everybody's bringing on the BA flight.
Okay. yeah. So, you know what? Hang on, before June Elizabeth, I did call Enid and I missed her. So I'm going to bring in Enid, then June Elizabeth, then the young lady here, Councillor Winter, and then someone at the back. Go on, Enid.
Good evening and thank you. Clive, Reverend Clive, can you indulge me 2 minutes of this meeting so I can do some information, please? So we are honoured that we've got the British Commissioner in Nottingham. In another 2 weeks, we're going to be having the Jamaican High Commissioner in Nottingham at the Acne Centre on the 28th of this month. So your questions, we're open that JAMPRO, which is the business arm of Jamaica, going to be there. Sessions are going to be there for you to apply for your passports and all those things. So please remember, listen to Kemet because I am open. I'm trying to organize an interview with the High Commissioner that is going to be done on Kemet Radio, maybe the ending of this week, early next week. So that's my bit of information for the community. I think Clive had already said my name and I'm from the Acne Centre. One of the questions that I would like to pose is that about our young people, and it's to do with mental health. The reason why I'm passionate about mental health because that's the background I'm from. And when I look at our young people over here after COVID and the lockdown, and I see the effect it's had on them and it's still having on them, I'm wondering what are we doing to prepare and look out for the signs for our young people in Jamaica. Because when I spoke with my sister that lived in St. Catherine and we didn't have much damage, she said she was so nervous. She sat there, the wind, and she never, and she was, even now when I speak to her, she said, my nerve is shattered. And she's in her early 60s. And it's still affecting her. And I'm wondering, what are we doing about people's mental health, offering support out there in Jamaica? Thank you.
Yeah, so very quickly on that, and thanks for the information as well, of course, on the Jamaican High Commissioner who would come here in 2 weeks' time and do turn up. I know him well, and he's extremely accessible. So I'm also plugging that. I'll tell him that actually when I've been plugging his event. But very, 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 very accessible, very accommodating. So I'm sure you will gain a lot from that session. On the mental health, big issue. Yeah, as I said, I think the trauma, the psychological trauma that Melissa left, and I think even before that we had issues that were bubbling up in the system. I know that through the school system, they've been trying to provide at least psychosocial support through the school system. We did some of it as well through the support that we gave, and making it kind of part and parcel, and training up a number of people, teachers, and particularly teachers, to kind of spot particular issues and maybe do at least the kind of basic psychological first aid. And there are many others as well, very eminent psychiatrists and others in Jamaica who have been involved in this as well. Is it enough? I don't know the extent of the reach myself, but there is a recognition that this is a major challenge. Absolutely.
Thank you. June Elizabeth.
Good evening. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm from Northampton. I've got my advocates from Northampton. I'm an international Windrush advocate, training consultant. I've been working this is my 47th year voluntary, working through helping people in the community get their status, etc. My question is there any way that we can work constructively together immediately to help the Jamaicans that were suffered from the Windrush, the Home Office Windrush scandal, and were deported, and they have just been forgotten about. I mean, I was in Jamaica over a year ago, and I managed to be at the National Library of Jamaica, and the manager, Bev, we had with another organisation, we had a Zoom, an international Zoom, and I think that's a good place because I left some flags there for a hub. But it's all right having meetings, but I'd like some action, and I'm quite willing to be able to support the people that are in Jamaica that need to be returned to England or get their compensation and get their status. Thank you.
So huge thanks for that. So I think when I met you, before I even went out to Jamaica, my question to you was, well, where are we on this? We know, I was very much aware of what was happening happening here in the UK. But my question to you at the time was, well, what do you want me to do? What do you want us to do at the High Commission with respect to people who are there? There's enormous, there's a sort of another phase of it, another stage that we need to be looking at. So I'm going to hand over to Clive, but this is something that we've had a very active conversation about, and therefore need to define what role the High Commission can play with respect to them. Because if they are British citizens, if they have served here, it is the responsibility of the British High Commission to seek out people who, who probably are British or entitled to that passport, that citizenship, etc. Yeah, so that's something that we're actively thinking about.
Absolutely. So collaborative working with the UK Jamaican High Commissioner, and my office as the Women's Commissioner is going to be important doing that. That's why I was so glad to meet with Alicia, because the data tells us that the biggest nationals who are affected by Windrush is Jamaican nationals. And you're right to identify that there are, sadly, we're not sure what the numbers are, but there are people in the overseas who still need help, and that help potentially to resolve their situation could be given by visibility of the Windrush scheme to help their status compliance and also compensation. So something that we are planning to do, working closely with Alicia, and also looking at how we do engagement directly in those countries. That's got to be part of the work. I've already spoken to the Minister and talked about the importance of overseas engagement. We do have members of the Engagement Home Office team here as well tonight, and they can tell you as well that they're keen to make sure that everyone who should get their status, both in the UK or overseas, and is eligible via the Windrush scheme gets it. So happy to be working with you and partnering with you going forward to achieve that. And what I would love to hear is people to contact my office if you've got people in Jamaica or parts of the Caribbean and you're concerned about status and potentially you want some clarity as to potentially if the Windrush scheme could help resolve that situation going forward. Right, I want to get back on track with the questions. So the young lady here, and then behind, Councillor Audrey afterwards.
I just had two questions. The first one is, how as a third generation Jamaican can I give back to my country? So I work in construction, and I was listening to the man behind me saying, it's so important that when we're rebuilding Jamaica, we're future-proofing, all the buildings. And I've been to Jamaica 3 times now, and every time I've gone back, I've definitely grown more in love with the country. And so I just really want to know, are there any youth boards, programs where I can, just give back to the country? And then the second one is how or what is being done to streamline the process of the second and third generation Jamaicans being able to get citizenship, because I know it can be a very, very rigorous process and a very long process. So I'm just
This is Jamaican citizenship? Yeah. Should I think on the last one, that's one for the 28th of March, when High Commissioner Williams comes up, so he'll be able to tell you about that. We can come back to you on the whole kind of youth piece. I'm 5 months into the job. I don't know yet about some of these schemes that may exist around young people and how they can probably give back, and the sort of energy and interest that I'm getting in the last week around younger people in the diaspora community. But of course, there could be schemes, for example, where you go and you volunteer for particular periods of time, or you're working for a company that invests in Jamaica. There are probably different ways in which to do it. But as I said, we're in the market for ideas. We're thinking about how that could be done. So we'll come back to you on that.
Great. Councillor Audra?
Thank you. This is probably an unfair question, but I just want your take on it. When we think about the climate crisis, energy security, and the cost of living, and think how much JPS charge Jamaican citizens for light, and you talked about, there's a lot of individuals that bridge light. We know that. Trinidad nationalised their oil company. What are your thoughts on whether Jamaica should be going down that road? But also, you know, Jamaica's got oil reserves, natural gas reserves, you know, and I know this is a question for Jamaican High Commissioner, but it's what's your thoughts on that?
Okay, this is where it gets tricky. So look, on the JPS piece, I get it, and that's why I was saying earlier on, you know, it is extremely high, and that's why the cost of living is so high in Jamaica. I don't know which of you have been there recently, but it is pretty high. And I'm saying that as someone who earns a British income living in Jamaica. So they're looking now to renegotiate that JPS contract, because the way in which it's constructed and wages has been contrived, it means that, you know, yeah, we are where we are with these prices, and there's a British company that's involved in supporting the government to renegotiate that contract. So hopefully, what we will have is that will hopefully lead to more reasonable prices in terms of energy. I think that they're still in very, very early exploratory phases of oil and natural gas in Jamaica, and very recently there was a British company out there sort of doing some of that work. Look, I don't think I know enough whether or not it should be nationalised or not. You know, if you nationalise, you know, the oil and gas finds when we do find them, you know, I don't know. But I think the way I tend to approach these issues, and I'm just giving my personal view, the way I tend to approach these issues is, you know, what is the best model that can give you a reasonable price, good output, quality output, consistency in the supply of the service, but at a reasonable price for the punters out there, right? And if that means nationalisation, maybe that's what it should be. If it means something else, maybe that's what it should be. But I think ultimately, right, given the high cost of energy, what it means for the supply chain, what it means for the cost of living, I think the government is very aware of the need for that reform. Hence all the work that's been done in order to renegotiate that contract.
Okay, we've got a lot about coming on to the last kind of 5 or 6 minutes. I want some rapid questions. Look, before I come to you guys, I want the lady at the back, Marks, get around to the back, and then I'm going to come to Melita, Councillor Diane, Ozzy, Steve, and we'll see if we come back to Mr. Wolverhampton.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone. It's lovely to have you here, to be able to listen to you and your answers, your questions, the fact that you're willing to take on ideas from the communities. First thing about security, for me, it's making sure we're secure here. In the UK, our spaces are secure, because the councils are no respecter of black spaces. We know that. We need to know where we can get funding, even if it's match funding, so we can buy things like Queen's Walk Community Centre, Acna Centre, so we can own it and run it ourselves. That's the first thing. Then we have a secure base to help our youth from all the islands, as far as I'm concerned, because I'm a mixture of a lot of them. So we can set up the schemes, so that we can run the schemes, so that we can teach and train our youth to then continue the work that we've started. There is a luncheon group of African Caribbean women that's been running there for 30, 40 years. It is dying out. I'm now going to do advertising because it's available for all the community. We need to make links. We need to advertise. We need to go major. TV adverts. Let's raise some money. Do a TV advert for Nottingham from the black perspective. These are the things that we need to do to keep our interest in the sort of like spotlight. Second thing, gentleman from Wolverhampton, I want your details. I actually work at Trent Bridge Care Home, and we've got affiliation with Notts County Football Ground. I'm doing the same thing.
Is there a question?
Sorry, raising space. Yeah, sorry. And right, the question is funding. Funding. That's what we need. Know where we're getting from.
Sure, I hope I haven't been ducking questions all evening, but I think that that's a question for the councillors and the others here. You know what I mean? I agree. You know what I mean? The funding that I am in charge of, the funding from the Foreign Office, is what we spend overseas. And you know, you're extremely articulate in the needs and have some excellent ideas about how to approach that. But I think for the councillors in the room, take note. and go talk to this lady at the end of the evening.
Great. So, Melita and then Diane. And then I'm coming back to this side.
Thank you. One of these might be a little bit contentious. This might be left.
Okay,
It probably
keep
should be
going.
left for the 28th. One of the things that we're very worried about here in the UK, and I know you've only been in your job for 5 months, so you probably don't know a great deal about it, is the fact that the Jamaican government is selling off so much of our assets. And we're very concerned about that, mineral and stuff that we've got, they sold off few things, and we're very worried about that. So probably that's something that needs for the other commissioner to answer. The next thing is, I've had this idea for a few years now, opening a school here in Nottingham for because we feel that especially our young boys, are getting a raw deal at school. And I've got a small team working on it, and I want it to be a school with a difference. So it's the link with the universities in Jamaica, schools in Jamaica. So I'm just wondering if that's something that the commissioners will be able to help us to take forward, because we know it's going to be a long thing to get it done, but I'm working on it.
Yeah.
So I wonder what help we will be able to get from the commissioners.
Sure. So your first one is definitely for the High Commissioner when he comes on the 28th, and I think you've already identified that. I think the second one on funding, our funding goes overseas. That's a 0.3% of the revenue that we collect in this country that goes overseas, so it's not for domestic use, i.e. use in the UK as such. But I suspect that there may be. I'm just thinking, I don't know if there's anything within the Department for Education or others that kind of provide support for that. But yeah, the funding within the Foreign Office is about what happens in this particular case, what happens in Jamaican soil or what happens across the region.
Okay.
So yeah, that's where that funding goes. But there may be stuff, sort of domestically that you can probably tap into. Sorry, I can't give you a better answer. But
Thank you.
I'm not in control of funds that can do what you want to do, is what I'm saying.
There's a beautiful confusion because you look so much like us.
Exactly.
I think we would recognize not really one of us. So my question is, Jamaica is a part of the Commonwealth.
Yeah.
And of all the Commonwealth countries, Jamaica is one of the rare ones that have to have a visa to come to the United Kingdom, where our main court is at. Now, as a Jamaican citizen, and looking at that, there seems to be some disquiet, some things that we're not quite understanding and quite getting. And so that is something that I think I'd like for you to address. Why are Jamaican citizens who are a part of the Commonwealth, who the king is still the head of our country, why do we need to pay to have a visa to come here? That's one thing. So remember, guys, we have the UK High Commissioner, not the Jamaica High Commissioner, okay? So I really want you to structure the questions and let us hit where we need the answers. The other one is about, and being 5 months in the job in Jamaica, you are aware that the Jamaica government is considering our constitution, and we want to depose the king.
Yeah.
So these are questions, again, for the Jamaican community, but we know that we also have to work with the British High Commission, the British government, to collaborate at some point in terms of moving that forward. Because as we know, I think a couple of years ago, Clive, I think it's about 2-3 years ago, I ran some town halls where we look at the Constitution and the importance around us having the information that we need to be a part of the discussion. So these are the things that I really want us to focus on with our amazing ambassador here. So could you please just address for me the one with why we have to pay for a visa to come here?
Sure. So, you asked two questions there about the visa regime, and then you asked about constitutional arrangements, essentially. Yes. So on the constitutional piece, Okay, that's okay, because that is for Jamaicans. The British government has no role in whether or not Jamaica becomes a republic or stays a realm. With the king as the head of state. And as you know, Barbados was, in the last few years, became a republic. And if Jamaica decides it wants to become a republic, the relationship still stands. We still have a relationship with Trinidad, which has been a republic since the 1970s. We still have a strong relationship with Barbados, and indeed with countries across the world that were once where the king was the head of state. Visas. That took a long time to come. So my official title is British High Commissioner to Jamaica, but sometimes I think I'm the visa officer, right? There isn't probably a weekend where I'm not getting someone who has access to me, a WhatsApp message saying, High Commissioner, I'm having this particular issue, etc. Can you help to unblock this? Can you facilitate this? Usually I have to send the email to Celeste, who's sitting there, who's become a sort of visa whisperer, right? And she kind of thinks about how the system works. So it is a very, I'm going to be honest, it's a very sore point, right? Jamaica is the only realm, the only country where the king is the head of state, where you've got a visa requirement. That visa requirement came in many years ago because of the issues around serious organized crime and around the number of people who were claiming asylum or who were basically running their enterprises from the UK, right? That was where this started. And indeed, similar reasons why we ended up with a visa regime in Trinidad towards the end of last year. It is an extremely sore point. It is one, and I'll be very honest with you, I was asked this in an interview very recently. Someone said to me, is it going to change soon? And I said, I am in no conversation with anyone that says that it is. Yeah? What I would say to you, I get the frustration. One, it takes, the form is quite long. Two, we know it's expensive. Three, you go through a whole process in order to get it. What I tend to do, because I am not impacting that bigger decision around whether or not there's a visa, well above my pay grade. That's a bigger decision, and that sits within the Home Office. But of course, within the High Commission in Jamaica, I have colleagues working in the Home Office. So I'm not involved or know of any conversation or discussion that says that this is going to move. What I do all the time is say, if we are going to have a visa regime, then our systems have got to work. Yeah? So if we're saying to people, you've got to go online and register to do X, the link should work. If we say to you, you've got to upload X, Y, and Z, we should be able to do that with relative ease, etc. So while I cannot impact the requirement of what's in place, my thing is, if it is in place, then at least people should be able to navigate this with relative ease. Yeah. So I'm sorry I don't have different news for you in terms of that, but it is an extremely sore point.
Last two questions coming up. We've got Ozzy and Steve, because we're right up against it in terms of time.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody, and welcome again.
2 minutes left.
Hi, Commissioner. Yeah, my concern is, right, and every time you talk to somebody about filling the form for the Windrush, they said, me not bother with it, sir. It's too complicated. Up to last night, I was on the phone to a friend, and I mentioned it. No, sir, me can't do it. Right? It's too much trouble. Right? The trouble is, why can't we make the, not we, you, your company, your people.
I thought this was your meeting.
Your people make it more simpler. Our people, like my dad, for example, come here in the 50s, and a lot more, they come here in the 50s.
No, I get it.
When there was...
I get it. I've got it.
Yeah, all right, let me finish, right? Right? Please make it more simpler so that people can fill in the form, right? The people that were coming on the board, right? I see in the paper, they're going to have for them 40,000, right? And the people that will build up this country to make it easy, and for all of us, what they get? Paperwork to fill in. And they can't fill it in. For most of them will come here in the 50s and 60s, can't read and write,
And we must, because at the time there was no such thing as school in Jamaica.
Yeah.
They're school, but they couldn't afford to go to it. So please make it more simpler so that people can fill in the form. Thank you.
Thank you. I hear that. It is work that we're currently doing. There is a Home Office policy team and an innovation lab, and we're looking exactly at that, and we're working with people who are coming back, who have filled in the form and said, this is not working for us, and I hear where you're going. I mean, there's probably people in the room who remember PPI. Remember PPI? And all it was sometimes, you just got a phone call, didn't you? And then someone says, are you X, and did you have a conversation? Well, yeah, you're going to get X amount of money. Okay, but so I'm hearing you, and you're right to bring that up. There are people here from the Home Office that have heard that tonight as well, and we are actively looking to make that simpler. And I'm going to reference yourself as part of that dynamic. Yeah, doing that. Steve. And then we're going to wrap up after this question.
Just a quick question around how you'll be wanting to work with children and young people, particularly in the areas of artificial intelligence and high-tech stuff. So I think that's the way you're going to get prosperity on the island.
Just quickly on that, recently I met through there's a program that we fund that supports up-and-coming entrepreneurs. And I learned a lot in the sense that there were so many people in the room who were in the tech and AI industry in Jamaica. Something that a lot of people don't know. There's a real sort of growing sort of industry in Jamaica around this. And what we have been doing through this program is to connect them to British companies. So many times they're not big enough to win big contracts here necessarily, but they could be part of bigger companies here that are then offering, they then have a kind of global offer, as it were. Yeah? So just to say that, yes, there is, really whizzy, interesting young people who are, in these startups in Jamaica, and that's growing. And what we're trying to do now is to facilitate that growth and to get them into the supply chain for major companies in the UK. Because what I was told then was that for a lot of British firms, the relationship and everything else and the quality of what they were getting was better from these Jamaican startups than from other parts of the world. So it's an area to watch, I think, in terms of an alternative. Because if the climate crisis continues as it is, with, you can only depend on tourism for so long, right? You've got to find, there've got to be other aspects of the economy that you need to develop and to grow, and AI and tech could be one of them. And there are others, but that could be definitely one of them, and I think there's a lot of promise there.
Thank you very much. Let's give a big hand to Alicia. We're rapidly coming down. I just want to say a few closing words, and then I'm going to ask Alicia for some closing comments. Yeah, great. So first of all, thank you to everyone who's joined us today in person and those of you who joined online. Really appreciate your time and your questions and the way that you've done that as well. I think it's been very open and respectful as well, and so I really want to appreciate that as well. And can we give a big round of applause to our tech guys, Event Horizons, which is Jeremy and Cameron, who've been running the online show for us as well. I want to say as well, as the Windrush Commissioner, I do have a team here as well. So if my team could stand up if you're around, and you can, there's a couple of them at the back here, and there's one at the front. Give them a warm round of applause. Their engagement, talk to them about Windrush as well going forward. And I want to also, if we can just put on the screen very quickly, a quick announcement about there will be an event happening here in Nottingham, a special film called Milestone, I believe. Yeah, can you see that behind me on the screens? Yeah, and so that is a spectacular film depicting about Windrush. It's going to be happening in Nottingham. Some of you may have seen it already at the Bonington Theatre. Please do register online. There is a flyer where you can get information. And 29th is the right date. It says 22nd. It should be the 29th. And I've got a special surprise for you. The main star of that film and character is right with us now. I'm going to ask him to stand. Mr. Victor at the back there. And so, you know, sometimes we say, oh, we're not getting enough of our own stuff. But here's a chance to support our stuff. So we're looking for a full sellout and to attend that event. I do have a few complimentary tickets. So if you speak to me nicely, you may get one. But please do register online. And finally, I just would like to invite Alicia to say a few closing comments.
Thank you very much for that, Clive. Look, I've been working in sort of international development and foreign policy for 25 plus years. And I've been very blessed and very privileged to have had, an incredible career till now. Going back to Jamaica and indeed to the wider region is very, very, very special for me. And I say this to my colleagues in the office all the time. This is not just a job for me, this is personal. And the last 5 months, yes, it's been challenging with Melissa. Some people thought I brought Melissa with me because I arrived only a month before she arrived. But the last 5 months have been so rewarding, and in all kinds of ways. And as I get more into understanding and getting under the skin of what Jamaica is about, and its people and its history and its culture, and my God, it's just dripping with all of that. It's just so incredible. And I like how people are bold. And it's a sort of all or nothing. And what I've had here this evening as well is a real sense of that. So as I immerse myself in what is a rich and incredible culture and country and a pride that's there, not only in Jamaica, but indeed across the region, but particularly in Jamaica because that's where I live, it's hugely rewarding to me so far. And I can't wait to see what we'll continue to do over the course of the next 3 to 4 years that I'm there. So huge thanks for coming out tonight, giving me as well this flavor of Jamaica in the Midlands. And I really hope that we'll find a way to continue to engage you, to harness your ideas, so that what I do and this privilege that I have of being the British High Commissioner to Jamaica, I can make something of it to further not only the interests of the UK, but definitely the interests of Jamaica and to Jamaicans. So huge thanks again for coming out. Huge thanks for the questions. No one was shy in coming forward. And that's what I really like and appreciate about Jamaica and its people and how you approach life. So thank you very, very, very much.
Finally, just to say that we do have refreshments, so don't rush off. If you go to the back, you'll be able to get some Jamaican food. And again, I just want to extend massive thanks for coming out and supporting the event tonight. And a great thank you for those of you online as well. Do have a good rest of the evening. God bless. Good night.
One more picture.